We're not about quick fixes, are we?
No, definitely not. No superficial advice here.
We want to give you, the listener, a deeper understanding, the science, the real insights behind successful partnerships to help you actually nurture that love, minimize the destructive conflict, and genuinely be happy together.
Absolutely. Think of this as your shortcut, maybe, to understand the complexities of marital satisfaction, resilience, all that stuff. We'll explore the scientific models, what makes a relationship actually tick.
And that absolutely critical role of communication, how it keeps the bond strong, how it helps you avoid those unnecessary fights that just drain you.
Right. And even individual factors, things you might not even think about that secretly impact your relational well-being. And then we'll get practical. We'll arm you with strategies from the leading experts on keeping love alive.
And crucially, how to maybe transform those conflicts. Instead of letting them erode things, turn them into opportunities for growth.
Yeah, exactly. We're not just looking at what we think predicts happiness. We're digging into what the data actually tells us. What really moves the needle.
Okay, so to really get started on this journey, let's first nail down what we actually mean by marital satisfaction. It's not just, a fuzzy feeling.
Right, it's more concrete than that.
Definitely. Researchers define it as a sort of global evaluation of your attitude towards your marriage. Imagine stepping back, looking at the whole picture. How happy are you with it? How stable does it feel? Is it meeting your needs?
Like a personal assessment of the whole thing.
Exactly. That comprehensive view, covering overall happiness and stability, that's marital satisfaction. And loads of research, really, over the last couple of decades, keeps pointing to this as a key measure of a partnership success.
And the why it matters part here is, well, it's huge. It's not just about feeling good, although that's obviously great.
Of course.
But the research, the empirical stuff, it powerfully shows real, tangible benefits of a high-quality partnership. Studies confirm its spouses in stable, satisfying marriages. They aren't just happier emotionally.
They're often healthier physically, right?
Yeah.
And even tend to live longer.
Exactly. We're talking concrete physical benefits. It goes way beyond just emotional well-being. A strong, loving partnership can literally add years to your life and, quality to those years, too.
It's quite profound, isn't it? It just shows how deeply our relationship health is tangled up with our overall vitality.
It really is.
And the quality of your marriage, it directly impacts your overall psychological well-being. It's fundamental. Think about it. A positive, supportive relationship, strongly linked to greater individual well-being, period.
And the flip side.
Well, the flip side is that low-quality, high-conflict marriages significantly up the risk for things like depression and anxiety. It just underlines how central your marital happiness is to your whole life.
It's not just one slice of the pie.
No, it permeates everything. Your peace of mind, your resilience, your ability to just thrive. A really fulfilling relationship can be this powerful buffer against life's stresses, helping you navigate the tough stuff without getting dragged down mentally and emotionally.
Okay, so if being happily married literally means better health, longer life, more well-being, the obvious next question is, how does that happiness actually change over time? Does it stay steady? Does it dip?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
For a long time, the conventional wisdom was this idea of a U-shaped curve.
Ah, yes, I've heard of that. The idea that satisfaction dips in the early years.
Often when kids arrive, all the stress that comes with that.
Right. And then it supposedly bounces back later in life, maybe when the kids leave home, couples rediscover each other, that kind of thing.
Exactly. That was the theory. It painted this somewhat predictable, maybe a bit disheartening picture of how relationships evolve.
But not necessarily accurate anymore.
Well, that U-shaped curve, it was a dominant idea, almost accepted truth for ages. But newer, more robust longitudinal studies, the ones that follow the same couples over many, many years, they've really challenged it.
How so?
Well, for instance, some research suggests satisfaction can actually stay pretty stable for long stretches, avoiding that big initial drop entirely.
Oh, interesting.
And even more strikingly, other studies found that satisfaction might even just keep declining through a marriage without that inevitable bounce back.
Wow. Okay, so not necessarily a U-shape at all then.
Not necessarily. It doesn't mean every marriage is doomed to decline, of course. But it definitely complicates that neat U story. It suggests the journey is way more varied than we used to think.
Okay, this is where it gets really eye-opening for me. The idea that the marital population isn't homogenous, right? There was that big 2008 study, Marital Happiness and Psychological Well-Being Across the Life course.
Yes, a pivotal one.
Yeah.
They used a fancy statistical technique, latent class analysis, basically Picture sifting through tons of data from thousands of couples over 20 years, looking for hidden patterns.
And what did they find? Not just one pattern.
Exactly. They found 3 distinct trajectories or paths that couples tend to follow regarding their marital happiness, which is just fundamentally important because it means not everyone's on the same track. It gives you agency.
Okay, break down those 3 paths for us.
Sure. First, about 38% of their sample they called stable high happiness. These couples consistently reported happiness well above average for the whole 20 years. Think of them as the steady, joyful ones who figured out how to sustain it.
Okay, that's encouraging. What about the others?
Then there was the middle happiness group, the biggest chunk, about 41%. Their happiness kind of hovered around the average, maybe a slight dip during tough times, but then an upturn. They managed to keep things solid, reasonably content.
All right, so high and middle, what's the third?
The third was the low happiness group, about 22%. They were consistently below average. Their happiness tended to decline initially and then showed only a very slight recovery later on.
So what's the big takeaway here for someone listening, someone maybe worried about that inevitable decline?
The big takeaway is that the inevitable decline isn't inevitable. It's not your predetermined fate. This research is a powerful message of agency.
Meaning you can influence your own path.
Absolutely. Your relationship isn't some fixed story. It's dynamic, something you actively write every day. You could be one of those stable, high happiness couples, or you can bounce back from a dip, especially if you have the right tools and insights.
It's empowering, really. You can proactively shape things, nurture the bond, build a partnership where you both feel cherished, and hopefully prevent that slide towards resentment or worse.
Precisely. It's about taking conscious steps to build a relationship you want.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. What actually predicts this marital satisfaction? That Abreu-Afonso study from 2021, the one in Portugal, had some really interesting findings, didn't it?
Incredibly compelling findings, yes. They looked at 331 people in marital relationships and identified 5 key predictors. And get this in their model, these 5 factors accounted for a remarkable 85% of the variability in marital satisfaction.
85%. Wow, that's huge. That gives us a serious blueprint.
It really does. It suggests that while every relationship is unique, these factors are powerful guides, almost like a relationship GPS, showing where to focus your efforts for lasting happiness and, crucially, for avoiding that slow burn of resentment.
Okay, let's unpack them. What was the strongest predictor?
By far the strongest, with a really significant influence, was intrinsic motivation.
Intrinsic motivation. What does that mean in a relationship context? Like why you're really in it?
Exactly. Think of the difference between doing something because you truly want to, deep down out of love and connection, versus doing it because you feel you have to, or for external reasons like social pressure or money.
So being in it for the love, the connection itself.
Yes. Because you genuinely love your partner, you want to adapt and grow together.
Yeah.
You find real internal fulfillment in the relationship. That's intrinsic. And this is absolutely crucial for keeping love alive and, frankly, avoiding hating your spouse down the line.
And the alternative, extrinsic motivation.
Right. If your main drive is external, maybe financial security, what society expects, even just convenience that can actually weaken those intrinsic motives over time, it makes it much harder to sustain genuine affection and commitment when things get tough.
Okay, intrinsic motivation is number 1. What came next?
Following closely, still very strong, was communication. This probably isn't a huge surprise to anyone.
No, communication always comes up.
Because the quality of your communication is like the engine driving the whole thing. It allows you to navigate changes, express needs, sort out differences, keep that emotional connection strong.
It's how you avoid fights, or at least handle them constructively, right? And how you stay genuinely happy together.
Absolutely. It's the constant dialogue, the listening, the understanding. That's what breathes life into the relationship day in, day out.
Okay, so intrinsic motivation, communication. What else did the study find? Some results were maybe a bit surprising.
Well, they found a noticeable, though smaller, negative impact from having a family with young children.
Right.
And also a family with teenagers.
Okay.
Yeah.
That probably resonates with a lot of parents listening. It's not about not loving your kids, obviously.
Not at all. It just reflects the reality, doesn't it? The immense pressures, the logistical juggling, the sheer exhaustion, the differing parenting ideas, the financial strain. It all puts undeniable stress on the marriage.
Yeah, it makes it harder to prioritize each other, harder to avoid those little conflicts that can blow up when you're tired and stressed.
Precisely. It's a well-documented pressure point.
Was there anything positive?
Yes. Professional academic status showed a small but consistent positive influence.
Meaning being employed or in school?
Generally, yes. Being professionally or academically active, engaged in work or studies, as opposed to being unemployed or retired, tended to correlate with higher marital satisfaction.
Any theories why? Purpose, money?
Could be several things. A sense of purpose, personal accomplishment, maybe the financial stability helps reduce external stress on the relationship, or even just having a wider social network and sense of identity outside the marriage.
Interesting. And what about things that didn't predict satisfaction in this study? That was also quite telling.
It really was. Factors we often assume are critical things like how cohesive the relationship feels or how flexible it is, even gender, education level, whether you're married versus cohabiting, first marriage versus not.
None of those are significant predictors.
Not in their structural model, no.
Yeah.
It really zeroed in on that internal motivation and the quality of your actual interaction as the primary drivers, more so than demographics or relationship structure.
That's a powerful reminder, isn't it? Circumstances matter, sure, but the inner workings are paramount for keeping that love alive.
Absolutely. Which leads us perfectly into digging deeper into communication and conflict.
Right, the heart of marital health. Absolutely vital if you want to avoid unnecessary fights and, keep that love going strong. We know it's strongly linked to satisfaction, but how does it work?
Well, there's a really clear difference between constructive and destructive patterns. The research is consistent. Satisfied couples,
Yeah.
they just do more constructive communication.
What does that look like in practice?
Things like openly expressing emotions, positive and negative, but respectfully. Using positive language generally, making an effort to clarify misunderstandings instead of assuming the worst, being emotionally available, showing affection, and even things like editing, maybe filtering out a harsh comment you're tempted to make or validating your partner's perspective, even if you don't totally agree with it. It's about trying to understand, build bridges, create that shared understanding.
That sounds like active work. Intentionality helps you stay happy together by building goodwill.
Definitely. And conversely, couples who are really struggling, they tend to rely much more on destructive styles.
Like what?
Negative ways of trying to resolve things, taking offense easily, letting issues just fester unresolved, which then escalates into really harmful patterns. Think constant negativity, one person shutting down or withdrawing completely.
Stonewalling.
Exactly. And when problems just sit there, unsolved, distress goes up for both people, and intimacy just plummets. It's a direct path to misery. And honestly, it's how couples can end up really disliking, even hating each other if they don't find better ways.
That makes sense. And related to communication pitfalls, we should definitely talk about Deborah Tannen's work on gendered communication styles. Her book, You Just Don't Understand, was huge.
Groundbreaking, really. Her concept of genderlex, the idea that boys and girls basically learn different ways of using language growing up, almost like different dialects.
So they end up talking past each other, conversations that cross purposes, she called it.
Precisely. Her core distinction is between rapport talk and report talk.
Okay, explain those.
Tannen argues women often engage in rapport talk. The main goal is connection, building intimacy, social affiliation. So when a woman talks about a problem, she might be looking primarily for empathy, validation, that shared feeling, I get it, that sounds tough, not necessarily a fix.
Right, whereas men
tend more towards report talk. The focus is often on exchanging information, maybe establishing status or independence, often with less obvious emotional content. So a man hears a problem, and his instinct might be to offer a practical solution, fix it, give advice.
And he thinks he's being helpful.
He does, but he might completely miss the underlying need for just empathy and connection.
I can see how that leads to misunderstandings. That classic example Tannen uses, woman comes home stressed, complains about her boss.
Yeah, she wants to vent, wants him to say, wow, that sounds awful.
But he jumps in with, well, did you try this? Did you say that? Maybe you should quit.
Exactly. And she feels unheard, invalidated. He feels confused because he thought he was helping solve the problem.
Tannen's point is that we assume we're all speaking the same language, but often the underlying messages, the meta messages, are totally different.
Absolutely. And just understanding that difference, recognizing these inherent styles, can stop so many arguments before they even start. It helps you keep love alive because you can try to speak the language your partner actually hears and understands.
Yeah.
You avoid fighting about the way you're communicating.
That's such a valuable insight. Okay, another huge framework for, avoiding ending up hating each other and minimizing fights comes from Dr. John Gottman. His 7 principles for making marriage work is based on incredible research.
Yeah, observing hundreds of couples in his love lab. He identified what he famously calls the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Sounds ominous.
They are. They're destructive communication patterns that, if they become habitual, are really strong predictors that a marriage might be heading for trouble. Think of them as relationship toxins.
Okay, let's name them. These are the big warning signs to watch out for.
First is criticism. And Gottman makes a key distinction here. Criticism is different from a complaint. A complaint focuses on a specific issue or behavior. I'm upset the trash wasn't taken out.
Okay, specific. Criticism is?
Criticism attacks your spouse's personality or character. It turns, I'm upset about the trash, into, you're so lazy you never do anything around here. It's global, blaming, and attacking.
Got it. What's the second horseman?
Defensiveness. This is reacting to perceived criticism by essentially playing the victim, warding off the attack, and usually blaming your partner right back. Instead of taking any responsibility, it's not my fault, you always.
Right, that escalate and blame game.
Exactly. Then the third, and Gottman stresses this one is the most dangerous.
This is the big one?
Contempt. He warns this is the single highest predictor for divorce. Contempt is when you view yourself as somehow superior to your spouse. It's utterly corrosive.
What does contempt look like? Sarcasm, eye-rolling.
Yes. Sarcasm, cynicism, name-calling, eye-rolling, sneering, hostile humor. It conveys disgust and fundamental disrespect. It's poison.
Okay, that's chilling. And the fourth?
The fourth is stonewalling. This is when one partner basically withdraws from the interaction to avoid conflict.
Like the silent treatment?
That's a classic example. Or physically leaving the room, shutting down, refusing to engage, conveying disapproval through silence. It cuts off communication entirely when things get tough.
So the takeaway here is crystal clear. You have to actively work to minimize and avoid these patterns if you want to avoid those awful fights, and ultimately avoid that path towards resentment and hate.
Absolutely. Recognizing them is the first step. Consciously choosing different behaviors is the next. These are the things that will slowly kill a relationship if left unchecked.
But Gottman doesn't just leave us with warnings, right? He gives us a positive roadmap, too. His 7 principles are about actively cultivating connection, keeping love alive.
Exactly. His core argument is really simple but profound. A happy marriage is built on deep friendship, mutual respect, a generally positive attitude towards each other, and what he calls emotional intelligence.
And the principles are practical ways to build that.
Yes. Concrete strategies to nurture that friendship and build resilience, even when things are tough. The first principle is share love maps.
Love maps, like a map of your partner's inner world.
Precisely. It means continuously storing and updating this rich mental database about your partner, their likes, dislikes, hopes, fears, dreams, their history, what makes them tick. Truly knowing them intimately and keeping that knowledge current.
Like constantly updating the GPS for their heart and mind. I like that.
Yeah. Second principle, nurture your fondness and admiration.
Focusing on the good stuff.
Consciously.
Yeah.
Showing care. Deliberately noticing and acknowledging the positives in your partner, building on that friendship foundation. It's easy to get bogged down in the negatives day to day, right?
For sure.
Nurturing fondness forces you to remember why you fell in love, reinforcing that positive regard. It's key to actually being happy and married.
Okay, love maps, fondness and admiration. What's third?
Third is turn towards each other instead of away.
Yeah.
This is about those small, consistent efforts to connect.
Like responding to those bids for connection he talks about.
Exactly. If your partner makes a small comment, shares a thought, points something out, do you turn towards them, engage, show interest? Or do you turn away, dismiss it, stay focused on your phone?
Those little moments add up, don't they?
Massively. Consistently turning towards builds this huge reservoir of connection and goodwill. It makes it so much easier to keep love alive and avoid that feeling of isolation that breeds conflict.
Makes sense. Number 4.
Fourth is let your partner influence you. This is huge. It's about genuine shared decision-making, being willing to yield, respecting your partner's perspective, and letting their input actually shape your choices sometimes.
So not always needing to be right or get your way.
Right. It aligns perfectly with research showing shared power is essential. This directly helps prevent those power struggles and arguments that lead to deep resentment.
Okay. Principle 5.
Fifth is solve your solvable problems. Recognizing that some problems can be solved and then applying specific, constructive conflict management skills to do it.
And Gottman gives tools for that.
He does. Things like a softened startup, starting a tough conversation gently without blame, repair attempts, trying to de-escalate when things get heated, physiological self-soothing, learning to calm yourself down so you don't get emotionally flowed, plus accepting influence, compromise, real tools for avoiding destructive fights.
Okay, so some problems are solvable. What about the ones that aren't? The ones that keep coming up?
That's principle 6. Overcome gridlock. These are those perpetual problems, the recurring arguments that feel like you're hitting a brick wall.
Yeah, those are exhausting. They can really breed resentment.
They can. But instead of letting them fester, Gottman suggests digging underneath to understand the hidden dreams or core values attached to each person's position. You might not fix the problem, but by honoring the dream behind it, you can often find ways to move past the block, respect each other's stance, and live with the difference without it constantly causing fights.
Finding a way to manage it, even if you can't eliminate it.
Exactly. And finally, the 7th principle, create shared meaning.
Going beyond just running a household together.
Way beyond. It's about building a rich inner life together. A unique couple culture with its own symbols, rituals, shared goals, appreciating your roles. As Gottman put it, marriage can have a spiritual dimension. It makes the partnership unique, deeply meaningful, helping you truly be happy and married for the long haul. It's the story you tell yourselves about your life together.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Okay, another really helpful framework for keeping love alive and making sure your efforts actually land comes from Gary Chapman and his 5 love languages.
Hugely popular,
Yeah.
and for good reason. His core idea is that we primarily express and experience love in 5 general ways. And the catch is, we often naturally speak our own preferred language, not necessarily our partners.
Leading to cross signals, right? Like you're showing love, but they're not feeling it.
Exactly. The 5 languages he identifies are, first, words of affirmation. This is hearing appreciation, compliments, encouragement. I love you, you look great, I appreciate you.
Okay, verbal validation.
Second, quality time. Undivided attention, meaningful conversation, doing activities together, being fully present. Third is gifts. Thoughtful presence as symbols of love and appreciation. Not about the price tag, but the thought, I was thinking of you. Fourth, acts of service. Doing helpful things, easing your partner's burdens, cooking, cleaning, running errands. It's showing love by doing.
And
Fifth is physical touch. Hugging, kissing, holding hands, a comforting touch. Conveying affection through physical connection.
And Chapman says we each have a primary one, maybe a secondary one too.
That's his theory. And the key, the real magic for connection, is figuring out your partner's primary language.
How do you do that?
He suggests observing how they naturally express love to others. What do they complain about most often? That often reveals what they feel they're missing. And what do they request from you most often?
Because we tend to give love the way we like to receive it.
Usually, yes. So if your languages are mismatched, you might be pouring out affection in your language, but your partner just isn't feeling love because it's not their language. And that leads to frustration on both sides.
Can you give that classic example again? The husband doing chores.
Right. The husband whose language is acts of service might diligently do the laundry or fix things, genuinely believing he's showing love. But if his wife's language is words of affirmation, she might see the chores as just chores and still feel unloved, wishing he'd just tell her he loves her more often.
And she might be showering him with compliments, which don't register as strongly for him as if she'd helped with a task.
Exactly. Understanding this mismatched language can prevent so much resentment. It lets you tailor your expressions of love so they actually land, making your partner feel genuinely seen and valued. That's fundamental for keeping love alive and being happy together. It shifts focus from your intent to their feeling loved.
Now, it's important to add a quick note here about the science behind love languages, isn't it?
Yes, that's fair. While it's incredibly popular and has helped countless couples communicate better, rigorous scientific studies looking for proof of one single primary language or proving that mismatched languages cause relationships to suffer have produced mixed or inconclusive results. Some recent research even challenges those core tenets.
So treat it more as a helpful framework, a conversation starter.
Exactly. It's a valuable lens for thinking about how you express and receive affection, great for fostering empathy and discussion, rather than a scientifically validated diagnostic tool. Its power is in its simplicity in the dialogue it prompts.
Got it. And this idea of different styles working ties into newer research too, right? Like that Henson et al. Study from 2024 on optimal interaction styles.
Yes, fascinating stuff. They suggest that successful styles like conflict avoiding, validating, even volatile, can actually emerge as different solutions to the same underlying problem. how a couple works together to maximize a shared goal, like overall happiness.
Like different dance styles achieving the same beautiful performance.
Kind of. For instance, a validating style where partners consistently affirm each other's feelings might emerge when the couple consciously balances the benefit of joint happiness against the emotional effort it takes to maintain that style. It's a deliberate choice.
Okay. What about conflict avoiding?
The conflict-avoiding style might arise more naturally when a couple doesn't place a high cost on intense emotional processing. They might value peace and harmony above diving deep into every disagreement.
And volatile. That sounds negative, but can it work?
Apparently, yes. The volatile style, which looks like a lot of passionate arguing, can still be successful for couples who have a very strong, positive underlying connection. Their debates might be frequent and intense, but often laced with humor and affection. Intensity doesn't automatically mean negativity for them.
So the big implication here is there's no single right way.
Exactly. Successful marriages aren't one size fits all. Different ways of communicating and handling conflict can absolutely work as long as they align with the couple's shared goals, their personalities, and their intrinsic motivations. It reinforces that there are many paths to keeping love alive and avoiding hating your spouse. It's about finding what genuinely works for your unique partnership.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the dynamics within the couple, but relationships don't exist in a vacuum, do they? External factors, individual stuff, that plays a big role too.
A huge role, often overlooked. Let's talk about the family life cycle's impact. Relationships evolve through stages, and significant changes in the family structure over time definitely impact marital satisfaction.
And those transition points are particularly vulnerable times.
Yes, researchers like Haley pointed out these transitions are high vulnerability periods. The relationship has to adapt, and that can be stressful.
Like what stages?
Well, beginning families, you're dealing with integrating families of origin, moving past that initial starry-eyed idealization phase. Then, the birth of the first child.
A huge one. Joyful, but undeniably stressful.
Immensely complex. Exhaustion, no time for the couple, more disagreements about parenting, money, chores. Marital satisfaction often takes a hit here because the romantic relationship gets pushed down the priority list. It's a real fork in the road. Couples can pull together or drift apart, increasing the potential for fights and disconnection.
Okay, what comes next? Teenagers.
When children reach adolescence, new conflicts can pop up: education, independence, values. Plus, this often coincides with the parents' own midlife stuff, maybe aging parents needing care. And critically, parent-child conflict can easily spill over and cause tension between the spouses.
Ugh, yeah. External stress bleeding into the marriage makes it harder to keep love alive if you're not careful.
Definitely. Then there's the children's departure, the empty nest. This requires a big readjustment to being just a couple again. For some, it's a chance to reconnect and improve the relationship. For others, it coincides with retirement, health issues, more aging parents, new stressors.
And what about kids not departing? Adult kids staying home?
That's increasingly common, and it can create tricky situations. Blurred boundaries, prolonged financial dependence, lack of privacy can definitely strain the couple's relationship.
And finally, aging together.
The aging of the dyad, closeness to death, that's another major transition point. Navigating health declines, loss, facing mortality together. Each stage brings unique pressures, unique opportunities to either succumb to conflict or consciously adapt and support each other, keeping that love strong through it all.
This leads really nicely into the interplay between marital satisfaction and mental health. That 2023 study by Yang and colleagues really dug into this, emphasizing the bidirectional relationship.
Yes, the idea that it's an interactive system. Your mood, your thoughts, your behavior, it doesn't just affect you. It ripples out and influences your partner's thoughts, feelings, behavior, and theirs affects yours. It's a constant feedback loop.
Like emotional contagion within the couple.
Sort of, yeah. And this strongly supports the marital discord model of depression, MDMD. Basically, unhappiness in the marriage is a significant risk factor for depression.
And that study used a fancy method to look at this. AP-MOM.
Right, the actor-partner interdependence moderation model. It let them analyze data from over 9,500 couples to see how your satisfaction affects you, the actor effect, and how it affects your partner, the partner effect. A true two-way street analysis.
Okay, break that down. Actor effect.
Actor effect just means your own marital satisfaction is linked to your own mental health. Higher satisfaction, lower risk of depression for you personally. Makes intuitive sense.
And the partner effect is the really interesting part.
I think so. Partner effect means your marital satisfaction is linked to your spouse's mental health. So if a wife feels really satisfied in the marriage, it can actually help lower her husband's depression levels and vice versa.
Wow. So the big finding.
The overwhelming takeaway was that high marital satisfaction was protective against depression for both partners. Maintaining a good relationship, contributing positively, it literally helps reduce depression risk for both people involved. So critical for being happy and married and protecting mutual well-being.
Did they find any gender differences in how this works?
They did, and they're important. Generally, wives tend to report more severe depression than husbands and also report marital dissatisfaction more often.
Okay.
But here's the interesting spillover finding. In their study, the husband's marital satisfaction had a stronger impact on the wife's depression level than the other way around.
Really? So a husband's contentment is particularly protective for his wife's mental health.
That's what this study suggests. It points to a potentially powerful dynamic where his investment and happiness in the marriage acts as a significant buffer for her.
So what does that mean for helping couples, for preventing depression or avoiding that slide into hating each other?
Well, it implies that prevention strategies should really prioritize women's mental health and specifically focus on addressing their sources of marital dissatisfaction. Not blaming, but understanding that improving her experience might have a particularly strong positive ripple effect on the husband's well-being too. It highlights a key leverage point.
Interesting. Did family structure play a role here too, like kids, extended family?
Yes, they looked at that. Generally, having more children was linked to higher depression scores, which fits with the increased stress and burnout potential we talked about.
Right.
And the protective effect of marital satisfaction on spousal depression, while still there, was maybe a bit less pronounced or more implicit when couples had more kids. The sheer demands might overshadow it somewhat.
But what about living with extended family? That had a different effect.
It did, and this was fascinating and maybe counterintuitive for some Western contexts. Living with more family members, like relatives, actually had a positive moderating effect on the wife's partner effect.
Meaning
The husband's high marital satisfaction was even more effective at reducing his wife's depression when they lived in a larger family setting.
Huh. Why would that be? More support.
That's the likely explanation. Reduced financial burdens, shared childcare, less housework pressure. The built-in support system of an extended family might buffer against stress, allowing the positive effects of the marriage itself to shine through more strongly. It's like how larger families were protective during the pandemic.
So for being happy and married, especially in cultures where multi-generational living is common, that extended network can be a real asset.
It seems so. And this finding is particularly relevant in places with low fertility rates, like China, where the study was done. While more kids can mean more burden, the willingness to have them might signal underlying marital happiness. And if you have that plus extended family support, it could actually be beneficial for mental health overall.
Okay, one more crucial individual factor they looked at, neuroticism.
Ah, yes, personality traits matter. High neuroticism scores consistently predicted higher depression scores both for the person themselves and for their spouse.
Remind us what neuroticism involves. Worry, anxiety.
Exactly. It's characterized by a tendency towards negative emotions, excessive worry, nervousness, anxiety, irritability, poor stress coping. It definitely makes avoiding fights harder because people high in neuroticism tend to be more emotionally reactive.
And did it affect men and women differently?
Well, they specifically found that the wife's neuroticism negatively moderated her own actor effect. Meaning, if a wife scored higher on neuroticism, the link between her own marital satisfaction and her own depression was weaker.
Why would that be?
The thinking is she might be more prone to suspicion, negative interpretations, maybe quicker to quarrel, even if overall satisfaction is okay. Her underlying personality trait makes her more vulnerable to depression, regardless of the relationship state at that moment.
So clinically, what does this mean?
It means that when trying to help couples improve satisfaction and prevent depression, you really need to consider personality, especially neuroticism levels, particularly the wife's in this study's findings. It's not about blame. It's about understanding a key vulnerability that impacts how well interventions might work or what kind of support is needed for them to be happy and married.
It's clear there's so much complex interplay, and science is constantly trying to get better tools to understand it all, right? Like that emotion recognition tech you mentioned.
Yeah, research like Boateng et al.'s in 2022, using machine learning on audio data from couples' conversations to try and automatically detect emotional states. It's cutting edge.
Wow. Imagine technology that could pick up on subtle vocal cues, signaling distress or connection.
Exactly. The potential is there for real-time feedback, personalized interventions. It shows the ongoing effort to find new ways to support couples and strengthen those bonds. It's a fascinating area to watch.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Let's try to pull together the core insights.
Right. We've seen marital satisfaction isn't just a feeling. It's a deep evaluation with real health benefits. And crucially, happiness isn't doomed to follow a U-shaped stable. Happiness is absolutely possible, and recovery can happen. You have agency.
And we know what predicts that happiness, don't we? That intrinsic motivation, being in it for the right reasons, is number one, followed very closely by constructive communication. Those seem to be the power duo.
Absolutely. While life stages like having young kids add strain, staying active professionally helps slightly. And remember, some things we thought were huge predictors maybe aren't as central as the relationship's inner workings.
And mastering communication and conflict is just non-negotiable for avoiding fights and keeping love alive. Understanding constructive versus destructive patterns, Tannen's genderlex, and especially avoiding Gottman's four horsemen criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and particularly contempt, that's essential.
Rooting out those toxins. But then also actively building the good stuff, using Gottman's 7 principles. Love maps, fondness and admiration, turning towards, accepting influence, solving solvable problems, overcoming gridlock, and creating shared meaning. That's the positive roadmap.
Plus, using Chapman's 5 love languages as a framework to make sure your love actually gets felt by your partner, speaking their language to avoid frustration, and truly help you both be happy and married.
And finally, remembering the broader context. The family life cycle brings challenges. Mental health and marital satisfaction are deeply intertwined, with partner effects showing your happiness impacts your spouse's depression, and vice versa. Gender differences matter, extended family can be a surprising buffer, and personality traits like neuroticism play a key role, especially for wives' vulnerability to depression.
Understanding all this really empowers you, doesn't it? To actively invest in your relationship. It's not passive, it's dynamic, requires conscious effort. But small, consistent steps in communication, appreciation, handling conflict better, they can lead to profound, long-term happiness. Building a love that doesn't just survive, but truly thrives.
So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. Given everything we've discussed, the different paths happiness can take, the huge impact of subtle communication, the role of individual traits, what hidden assumptions might you be holding about your own relationship? Assumptions that, if you explored them with fresh eyes, could potentially unlock an even deeper wellspring of connection, understanding, and contentment.